Hello and welcome, one and all. It's our grand finale. It's the last show of the year. 2021 has been a most eventful, exciting, and weird year in many different ways. And I am honored and delighted to have shared so many precious moments with all of you over those past weeks and months. Ever since we started Light 'em Up back in March 2020, we've been live every single week, and 2021 was no exception, with tremendous stellar guests, great conversations, very inspiring insights. And today is no different. For the last show of the year, we have put together an incredible panel of industry legends and cigar world icons. And it is my pleasure, my privilege, and my honor to welcome Mr. George Brightman to today's show.
I don't know whether I belong in the legends and icons category, but the survivor, having been around long enough to witness a few things, sure, I'll take that. Anyway, listen, it's a privilege to be here with you, and I really enjoyed it. It seems like only yesterday we were talking, but actually it's a week ago. In the interim, I hope everyone has had a wonderful holiday start season.
Absolutely true. And what a wonderful Christmas that was, especially the Cigar family Christmas that we all shared last week. George, thanks so much for being here. Next on the lineup, our dear friend William Cooper from Cigar Coop. Well, it's always fantastic to have you on the show, and thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us today.
Rookie mistake. I made the rookie mistake. Yeah, I was muted. No, thank you very much for having me on. Really excited to be here with all the folks here. So it's an honor, and I think it's gonna be a great evening / afternoon wherever you are.
And last but not least, the editor-in-chief, the man behind Cigar Journal, Reinhard, thank you so much. You were a supporter of Light 'em Up from day one, or even before the whole thing was live. It means so much, and thank you for taking the time today as well, being here with us.
Of course. And thank you, Reinhard, for all the beautiful work you've done over the past 2 years. It's an honor to be here, really, with all the great guys I see on the screen. Thank you.
Many, many thanks. Well, let's start right away and take a look back at what has been and what the cigar world has evolved into over those past 12 months. And I would like to start by asking you, George, in a few short sentences and thoughts, when you take 2021 as a cigar year, was it an amazing year? Was it kind of so-so, or do you feel like we're in a worse position compared to 12 months ago?
Short and sweet isn't my forte, but I'll put it this way. If you think of this year in terms of expectations, you could maybe say that there were some disappointments. But my personal feeling is that, the numbers were great. Business was good for a lot of cigar retailers and certainly for a lot of cigar manufacturers. So taken in toto, I think we have to say that, coming out of an era when everybody was locked down and in a state of panic and travel restricted and social gatherings being hampered, the cigar business prospered, and 2021 seemed to, in a way, accentuate how important people felt cigars were to keeping themselves comfortable and happy in 2020's lockdown period. So to my way of thinking, it's not about whether or not any one of us discovered a terrific new cigar. I'm sure we can get to that later. Or whether anybody made a revolutionary new product. Instead, I think it's that cigars reaffirmed their importance as our boon companion in troubled times.
I think that's a wonderful way to put it. And Will, I'm sure you would relate to that and second George's thoughts, but what is your own perspective on how the industry has evolved over those past 12 months?
Yeah, I tend to agree with George. It's funny, I just wrote about this in my own year-end article today. And, there's this cliche that we've been hearing every year. John knows the cliche I'm going to talk about. There's never a better time for cigars. And it depends how you're going to interpret that, right? So on one hand, hey, you know what? Last year, everyone was locked down. This year, folks are getting back together. I can understand that. But, let's face it, there has been, the demand has been outpacing supply. So you have some cigar shortages. We've definitely noticed a market quality decrease in some of the cigars over the past year. So, I kind of look at it from that end and say, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, we're all kind of able to get out of the virtual world to some extent, but there's some other things right now that it isn't fun having back orders and it isn't fun having quality problems is what I'm going to say. So it's kind of like a mixed bag.
Reinhard, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think when I look back, I don't remember any year that has not been a roller coaster for the cigar industry. There's always something going on, be it the FDA, be it the EU regulations, be it whatever. There's always challenges. This year was no different. I think that the cigar industry in a whole is in a very good shape. Also for us consumers, not only for the industry, but also for us consumers. We are facing problems, of course, from the manufacturer side, from the retailer side, from the consumer side, from the media side. Everybody has its problems. We're coping with it, and I'm looking in bright 2022.
Great to hear. I would love to dive further into some of the aspects that you mentioned. What I wanted to say, though, is for everybody watching, whether it's here on Zoom or for all the people over on the Facebook live stream, if you have any thoughts, comments, questions to our wonderful panel, please make sure to put them underneath the live stream into the comments. I'm always checking the live streams so we can bring your questions to our panel's attention and discuss them further. However, I'm also super happy and delighted to see so many wonderful people here with us at the lounge, like Nick Perdomo and Fuad from Hiram and Solomon Cigars. So I would love to give you gentlemen an opportunity to chime in as well, join us and share some of your thoughts and your perspectives as to how you have seen 2021 and how it has been for you. Obviously, Nick, yet again, we mentioned it last week, but I would like to personally congratulate you on the award that you received for Cigar of the Year with Cigar Journal. And I believe that's a wonderful way to end 2021, but I would love to hear your thoughts as well. And welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I know it's probably cold where a lot of you guys are, but where I'm at, it's balmy and 82 degrees outside right now. And yeah, it was a great year. I remember when I was young talking to George Brightman when I started in the industry. And one of the things in this year, and George kind of hit a lot of it right on the head, was business was great for a lot of cigar manufacturers and for a lot of retailers. I've always been accused by our accountants, or bean counters, I call them, as making too many cigars, growing too much tobacco. And I always thought that a finished cigar that was well aged was worth a lot more money than money in the bank. And so what happened
right,
was,
Nick.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me you got to make cigars, and you got to make great cigars, and they have to be well aged. And I think that the thing that we were blessed with, George, is we've had a tremendous amount of inventory. For the last 23 years in Nicaragua, we never closed for Christmas. We only closed the 24th, the 25th, and the 1st. And we continue doing that. and our workers appreciate it because they make double time throughout the whole regimen of December, which really helps them during the Christmas season. And what happens is when you allot a month every year, that means I've been open for 23 months, almost 2 years, versus a lot of the companies in Central America that seem to close their facilities down for December. And to me, it's pennies on the dollar to make sure your workers continue working and making that extra pay, especially during the Christmas time. And we need cigars, and I can't sell cigars if I don't have them. And I think there was a big supply problem during COVID where a lot of guys had shut down, in my opinion, unnecessarily. We did what the government asked us to do, not only in Nicaragua, but in the United States, and we never closed. And we had extremely few cases of COVID. And I feel blessed that with our workers, not only here in the United States, but also in Nicaragua. And we worked Monday through Saturday, all through 19, all through 20, and we continue doing it in 21. And we're proud that we were able to ship 99.38% of our shipments to our customers around the world. And we got to be able to not only supply our retailers, but our consumers. I think they were appreciative of it. We were sure appreciative of it. They're doing us the favor by buying us the cigars, buying our cigars. And we had a bumper year. And, you know, listen, our friends at Brightman and Holland will tell you they had a lot of problems with COVID. We overordered, and we continue doing it because, look, no, there's an old saying my dad used to say, nobody should wait in line to give you their money. And we have to make sure that we get cigars out to our consumers. And we're doing it. We just shipped out a huge shipment out to our distribution team in Germany to make sure that all our guys in Europe are going to have cigars for the new year. And we can't sell cigars if we don't have them or make them. And we've been blessed on that. We grew double digits in 19, we grew double digits in 20, and we grew double digits in 21. And 19 was a record year, 20 surpassed it. 21 has already beat 20, and the gravy's on the next 3 days. You know, we have a launching of our YouTube channel today on shipping. And when you watch it, you'll get to see me in the shipping department because you can't get people to work anymore these last 11 months. So I like to get in there and mix it up with the guys too. But you can see how a container comes in and how we do it every single, you know, Tuesday. And we have a shipment coming in tomorrow, and I'll be there. And we're gonna turn that shipment around tomorrow and Friday and get it out, so it'll be out for 2022. So we've been blessed. So I'm probably a little more long-winded than George is, but that's a synopsis in 2021. 2022 will be an interesting story. In the United States, we have a tremendous amount of inflation right now. People are struggling, and businesses can't get workers. It's been a disaster the last 11 months. It'll be interesting to see. You always pray for the best, but I don't know. That'd be a great question. I'd like to ask you guys what you guys think of 2022. 2021 was fantastic. If guys couldn't supply, they didn't supply. They had their reasons for it. I understand it, but you know, I can only speak from my company. It was phenomenal, and I feel we're really blessed. And I'd like to thank all you. And it's nice seeing Reinhard here. Reinhard, thank you for that trophy. You know, your magazine is one I truly respect. It's nice when you go down to Nicaragua, you actually mention my company. We've been one of the founders there since 1995. So journalistically, I'm awesome and proud that I won that award, and I want to thank you and all the consumers for that.
Well deserved, Nick. Well deserved. And by the way, your work ethic and the dedication has just shown that, you know, the cigars just keep on rising to the top, and you should really be proud of that, you know. And the thing is, there's a lot of other people that are competing to get that same attention and win that same consumer dollar, and you guys are coming up smelling like roses consistently. It's brilliant. I couldn't be happier.
Well, thank you so much, George. Hey, listen, I've known you since I was a kid when I started, and you were always kind, and anytime I'd ask you a question, you always answered it. You're one of the guys that I really look up into the industry, and you know that I'm no bullshit. So thank you for that. And I really respect you for saying that, and thank every one of you for that. And I'm really proud of our team, not only in the United States, but in Nicaragua. Our workforce is phenomenal. I've been blessed. I mean, my average worker's been with me for over 20 20.3 years, 20 years and 3 months on average. And, when you have that little bit of that very little turnover, I think you build a more consistent product, and we're moving forward, and that award's for our team.
Well, congratulations, man. You should be proud.
I'm very proud, very proud. Thank you, George.
Nick, one question that I would like to follow up with is a lot of manufacturers have reported that it's getting harder and harder to find people working the factory floor. Many of them went into other industries or probably tried their luck elsewhere, and not in Nicaragua or Honduras. How do you manage that? How do you keep up with that and make sure that you still have enough skilled people that you need to stay up with those exceptional numbers that you've mentioned, and with the boom that's currently happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. The big thing that we've had to deal with is now we have open borders in the United States. Not only Honduras, but Nicaragua and Dominican Republic are losing a tremendous amount of their workforce coming across the borders illegally into the United States. We've lost about 37 workers. We've actually had 4 workers come back, which is kind of unique. And what we did about 22 months ago is we built a training center where we were training a lot of the family members of generational workers that we had. And then we built a school to teach people just north of the city of Esteli. And little by little, we've been able to implement more and more workers. We opened up 2 more factories in Esteli 2.5 years ago. Small production, one facility, we built it from 0 to 18,000 cigars a day. The second facility, we built it from 0 to 11,000 cigars a day. So it adds up, you know what I mean? And these are cigars that we wanted to be able to keep to build stock right now. So one factory makes 3 brands of a particular cigar that we make with 4 SKUs, and the other factory does 2. So that's really helped our number 1 factory, our large factory in Esteli. And we've been able to compensate because of that, also because of the training center. But it's a slow process, because George will tell you, and a lot of you guys have been in the industry, it takes a while to be able to teach somebody and teach them correctly in the way you want to work. The attrition rate has been over 80%. So it's costly for the company because you go through a lot of materials that can never be reused again. So it's the only thing you can do in the future. We hope that the people decide to stay. A lot of them make a big mistake. They think they're going to come to the United States and make all this money. A lot of them in their late 30s and 40s. That's not the time to come and start your life again in a different country. I understand what they're trying to do, but a lot of them we're doing really well. We're one of the fortunate ones. I've heard stories of people losing upwards to 100 workers, and it keeps going on. I hope that we can stop it, because that is the biggest worry that I have, is losing our workers to immigration into the United States. And that's been happening with everybody. I'm sure you've heard about it, but you combat it the best you can. We have a real loyal workforce. When I think about it, with all we have several thousands of workers, to have only 37 of them leave, and those 41 and have, only have 4 of them come back and only have 37 gone. I'm probably pretty fortunate, you know what I mean? But every day you hear something, the buses come and pick them up. It's pretty crazy.
George, in your experience, have you seen a similar bloodletting of skill and talent that is just gone from the industry, or is this something you haven't experienced before?
Well, there's a lot of, and Nick can reaffirm this, I'm sure, but there's a lot of what he was just describing that is very reminiscent, maybe for different reasons, than what factories went through during the cigar boom of the 90s. In other words, competition for labor, losing them, the investment in training, finding out who actually is a good long-term hire, who has potential to grow in your business. Through a mix of perseverance and patience and the right kind of teacher, brands survive and often thrive and grow. And one of the things is that the workforce responds to companies that invest in their labor force, that enhance their teaching and training, and do think about providing benefits and ways to augment the lives of even the families of their workforce. And so that gets repaid tenfold. But I can tell you this for sure. There's nothing unique about Nick's circumstance. In other words, everybody has the same pressure, but how it gets managed and how it manifests in the longer run is maybe adjusted for scale. So the bigger you are, the more risk you have of losing a lot of people, because everybody looks around and goes, oh, well, it's no big deal if I leave, right? A small company, a boutique company that has a very tight group of people may be able to address, oh, don't go, and reach out to their workforce. Plus, they have because they're small and focused, they have a different relationship with their workforce anyway. But there's nobody that's immune from market forces like that. But actually, if you don't mind, Reinhard, I'd like to pivot and ask another question to Nick. That to me is equally important in terms of going forward and what we're hoping for 22. And that's about pressure about the leaf. In other words, what the crop cycles have been like, what you're forecasting for the harvest, and also what the pressures, because I mean, we know it just by seeing what cigars are in the marketplace, but there are other countries coming to Nicaragua to buy tobacco. So in other words, it isn't just Nicaraguan cigar makers that have to think about what's going on with what they're growing and how they're bringing it in and how they're aging it. You have factories from all over the world, with the exception maybe of one tiny island, that are coming to Nicaragua to buy leaf. So what's that pressure like, and what is the outlook for 22?
That's a great question, George. For us, because we're vertically integrated and we grow tobacco, it doesn't affect us so much. But I told someone just recently, if you came to Nicaragua today with $5 million, you couldn't buy one leaf of tobacco because it's all spoken for. You hit it right on the head. Yeah. Everybody wants Nicaraguan tobacco. Even that little island would probably want it if they can get it. You know what I mean? And the thing
if they could afford it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's incredible. I remember 3 years ago when Reinhard had his cigar trophy awards. It was best brand of Dominican Republic, whatever, the Davidoff Nicaragua. Then it was Honduras, whatever brand of Nicaragua, and then it was another country, and it had the sub band was Nicaragua. And then Nicaragua, I won an award, and I said, "Wow, this is great. This is a cigar actually made in Nicaragua with Nicaraguan tobacco." So I can't blame them. I mean, in my personal opinion, it's just the finest tobacco in the world. I mean, we have a lot of attributes. My dad said there was something that was very unique with Nicaragua. 13 hours of sunshine, which produced a tremendous amount of photosynthesis, a tremendous amount of clean water, valleys and volcanic dirt that's rich as can be with little to no lead, which is just medicine for the tobacco, and these cool fronts that we get at night. And it's medicine for the tobacco. And for people that don't grow tobacco or don't have a tremendous amount of stock, it's a huge problem. And also with demand, whether they be Nicaraguan manufacturers, George, like you hit it, like you said, and people from the Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Brazil, and everywhere else they can buy leaf. It's punishing because there is no tobacco on the ground. There is no tobacco you can buy. The tobacco is extremely expensive. If you can buy it, it's going to cost. Costs are going up. We all know that. My fertilizers have gone up almost 41% in the last 18 months. It's just astronomical, the cost factor, and there's no ground to be had to even expand your growth if you want to grow. We've been fortunate. We've been growing tobacco there since 1999. But I'm having a tough time. I mean, I just purchased 10 acres of land. And you know what I purchased it for, George? To set curing barns on them. So I have room across the street for my bigger farm. So I don't have to use that 10 acres to put houses down, so I can actually put tobacco in it. That's how tight the situation is. Lack of farmers also, because not only you got tobacco, but you have the coffee industry and all different roses, all type of industries. And it's like the Dominican Republic in '97, George. Everybody's fighting, you know, and a lot of the new guys are increasing pricing, which is going to hurt in general. It's a war. It reminds me a lot of 1997, especially in the Dominican Republic. Nicaragua, and there's no employment right now. I mean, the unemployment rate in Esteli is 0. Yeah. So if you open up a factory in Esteli, all that you're doing is you're just taking workers, and most of the workers these new guys are getting are guys that nobody wants anyway, because they're not good at it. You know what I mean? And nobody wants them. And Reinhard said something that was really true too. You know, there's I heard this from David Garofalo. There's a lot of substandard cigars coming into the marketplace because of the demand, George. And you know it better than anybody. Back in the 90s, where everybody was in such a rush to make cigars. I mean, I'm hearing factories right now that are running double shifts. I don't know how the hands and the back and the eyes can work double shifts making cigars and making them a quality. But the leaf is going to be a problem. And that's not only Nicaragua, too. I was just talking to a friend of mine, Fritz Bossard. You know, the Connecticut broadleaf crop is decimated. Maduro wrappers are going to be at an all-time low in 2022. I don't use wrappers. I don't use broadleaf wrappers from Connecticut or Massachusetts or Pennsylvania. You know, I grow my own wrappers, but that's going to be a big problem for a lot of the makers in the Maduro market. And, you know, where are they going to go? I don't know what's going to happen, but you hit that was a great point. We're going to have some shortages in leaf too. And this, I call it a parachute, this parachute of a lot of my friends that don't make cigars in Nicaragua, where I see them at the airport trying to buy leaf. It's just, there is none. You can't buy any tobacco now, nothing, unless you want scrap or light sand leaf tobacco that nobody wants anyway. That's about it. Nicaragua's as dry as the desert right now when it comes to tobacco.
That's exactly what I was driving at, and I wanted your take on it. And it's funny that you mentioned the idea about guys that are coming in to start new businesses. But my take was, if you're coming to Esteli to start a cigar factory, you better bring your own workforce.
Absolutely, you better bring your own tobacco too. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's not the place to start, unfortunately. You know, George, when I went to Nicaragua in 1995, there were 2 cigar factories. It was Natsa, which was Lou Roth's factory, and then you had Simon Camacho, he's no longer around, but you had the Hoya Nicaragua factory, and then it was us. And it was all dirt floors. There was no running water. And I remember asking my dad, what the hell are we doing here? There was no electricity. And my dad would point to the ground and say, look at the grounds. That's why we're here. You're going to see this is going to be revolutionary. And my dad was right. So, and now there's about 80, now there's 80 cigar factories. You can't find, there is zero workforce right now. Everybody has buses. We're all going 40, 50, 60 miles, picking up people out in the sticks to get them to work. A lot of them are very appreciative because they can't get work, but it becomes costly. For example, we have 11 school buses that pick up, 84 people and 11 school buses. Do the math, over 900 people a day we're picking up and taking them back to their villages. And that costs, diesel's, $4.90 a gallon in Esteli, and you got to fill these buses up. But it's just to be able to get workforce, because there is no workforce whatsoever. You
got to get those buses running electric.
Let me just add to what Nick said. Nick, I know that the question about the workforce is crucial in Esteli, but I want to say what you told me and what I experienced when I several times visited your factory. You are one of the few who treats their workforce like family. And I think that makes a huge difference. people want to stick with you. You once told me, I forgot about the years, but you once told me the average person in my factory works here for, I don't know, 27 years or even longer, I don't know. But you treat your people like family, and that makes a huge difference.
I don't really know why you wouldn't. Look, those are the guys that took you to the dance, and you got to be appreciative of them. It's like, well, we had 2 hurricanes this year. Most of my farm workers work 24 hours a day digging trenches to circumnavigate water around all our different farms. Would family even do that for you? You know what I mean? They are like family. I'm proud to say I'll be going down in the first week of February. We'll have our 719th worker retiring from the company. I've never missed one retirement, and thankfully nobody retired during the height of COVID, because I probably would have missed one, but I've never missed one of the retirements. And my dad always used to say that if you treat people like family, 9 out of 10 of them will fight and pull the same way you're pulling all day long, because they have so much respect for you. And I like those odds. And thank you for, Reinhard, you've been to our facility. Listen, we're blessed. We have so many of the same. My oldest worker's 91 years old, still with the company. I hired him when he was 64. I said, if I could get 5 years of good tutelage, from him teaching, it would be great. And lo and behold, almost 26 years later, he's still with the company. He'll be 91 in April. So I'm blessed. I have a great workforce, and the greatest asset of my company is certainly not me. It's our workforce. And I do believe that if you treat people well, and we are a family-run business, it pays you back in spades. And what it does, it gives you more quality. If a guy is continuously doing the same thing, he's going to be better at it, because practice makes permanent. And if he does a great job, we do that. Like, we don't even move guys to different sizes. We move them to better pay scales every year. So if a guy's making a crony, he does a great job, he can make equivalent to a guy who's making a torpedo. Why punish the guy if he's doing a great job to move him to a bigger size where he loses control, and maybe the first 3 weeks he makes very little to no money? If you do the math, and I did it years ago, he loses money. So yeah. I thought that was stupid. So what we do is we pay them on a floating pay scale, and they get rewarded by what they do, and they also get rewarded by staying at what they do best. And I believe that's really important.
Hey, Nick, I want to pivot on to George's question now about, when he's talking about forecasting, and you mentioned the U.S. economy. There's a lot of uncertainty going into 2022, inflation, other things. How do you now account for that with the 3 years of growth that incredible 3 years of growth you have? What's your plans for this year in terms of doing?
I'm gonna continue. I always say that the company should grow by 25%. Sometimes it's pie in the sky, but look, if you have well-aged product in aging coop, and you've seen it in our facilities, those cigars are going to sell, maybe not today, but tomorrow. But one guarantee is the product is going to be rock solid, and the consumers are going to enjoy it, and the retailers are going to be confident in selling it. And I just think it's better to have finished product and aging than having money in the bank paying you 0.5% that's doing nothing. And we opened up those 2 factories because my CFO told me in 2017 that by 2026 we would have literally 10% of the stock that we had at the time, and we would literally run out of finished cigars, not aged fillers, binders, and wrappers, or rollers, or the amount of cigars. It was just because of the demand of the cigars and the double-digit growth that we had. When I mean double-digit growth, I mean we grew 39% in 2019, and we delivered. We grew 31.3% in 2020. I hate to throw numbers around, but it's the truth. And we delivered, and we're almost at 29% this year, and we delivered. But there gets to a point where you start running, where you're going to crash into a hill. And I had to make that determination. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, because like I said earlier when I was talking to George, I mean, there's materials there that you're losing because you're training, but you have to look to the future, because if you don't, you're not going to have a future. And it's insane not to be able to start teaching some of the young guys and teaching people a trade. And let me tell you, these cigar rollers are making more money than doctors in Nicaragua. So it's a hell of a trade for someone in Nicaragua, to be honest with you. I mean, when I first came to Nicaragua, they walked to the factory. Then my father bought them bicycles. Then they went to motorcycles. Now I have about 79 cars in the parking lot, and they're certainly not all mine. They're the workers. So it's pretty cool. People are advancing, and I'm happy about that. That's one of the great things about capitalism and about their work ethic, and they're doing a great job.
William, I would love to follow up on one point that Nick mentioned earlier, and that is diminishing quality in the cigars that you review. Have you had such experiences recently as well? And then maybe Reinhold would like to chime in as well with his experience from the Cigar Journal blind tasting panel.
There definitely has been a decrease in quality. In fact, just from I track a lot of the average scoring, and I've looked at some of the average scoring across other media brands as well. And there definitely has been a decrease. I've talked to other media guys as well. And Dave mentioned Dave Garofalo. And Dave Garofalo was on my show earlier this month. And this topic exactly came up where, we're seeing things that, cigars, just the construction's not good. The blends are inconsistent. And so it's concerning. It's definitely concerning because there were some, very good years we've had. I'm not saying every company's doing that either. So, but it's noticeable this year for sure.
Well, from our point of view, I can say that I know that there is a huge pressure of demand onto the manufacturers, especially from the retail side. And we, as a cigar magazine, we smoke a lot of cigars, that's true, but the retailer will be able to tell you much more about their customers' experience. And what I hear from the retailers all over, also from David Garofalo, but also from big retailers in Europe, is exactly that. That the average quality is a little bit under pressure right now because of logistics problems, lack of tobacco, and so forth. And yeah, there might be a slight, downgrade in quality right now. I don't know if it's significant, probably more with some brands than with others. But yes, it's obvious.
Yeah, no, and Reinhard, you make a good point. The idea that a retailer is coming out and saying this, and that's why Dave's comments on my show was it really hit home. This is a retailer who's saying this, who wears a media hat. I get that, but he's also there to sell cigars, and he's saying that. That was a real eye opener for me, saying, you know what, there's something going on here. It's not just us media guys being the uber critics here. So that was a very telling thing. Yeah,
no, you're right. Well, I mean, the retailers are the first ones to really get hit with that point. We as media, we get it later probably, but the retailer is the first one, the first address. Yeah.
Now, with Perdomo being a vertically integrated company, that is one side of the industry and one part of the business. We have Fuad here, and Fuad, you work with different manufacturers for Hiram & Solomon brand. If you don't mind, I would love to hear your opinion. And our dear friend Scott Vines posted a question over on Facebook regarding the very same topic as to how do you see the situation for brand owners who closely work and who rely on the growers, the manufacturers that they're working with, and how can they manage the situation in the very best way?
First, greetings to all. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you. I get to, in our 6 years of existence, I get to know most of you here, whether in person or through social media. I mean, it's hard first to come after Nick and put my 2 senses in here. It's a little hard, but as a small company, we had our challenges definitely, and at the same time we had some our positive also. 2021, 2020, definitely we saw a huge increase in our expansions. As I mentioned before, we've only been in the market 6 years. January 4 will mark our 7th anniversary. So we grew from, and as Nick said, he doesn't like to throw numbers. I don't, but it's all right to do it sometime. We grew from 10,000 cigars 6 years ago to over 1 million cigars this year. And we're in about 30 countries, and we're growing very fast. Our problem is definitely keeping up with the production and getting product enough in time. The problem is not, our main issue are the boxes, not the manufacturing of the cigars, especially the one from Nicaragua. The one from Dominican, because right now we're all also at the PDR factory with the 8 florists. Those we're not having any problem with them. They're coming on time and everything. The one that we doing at Plasencia factory, the boxes are very hard to come by, and so far I have an order that's supposed to be here October 1st. It is sitting in the warehouse. The cigars are aging, but it doesn't help me. I have a lot of people waiting for the cigars to sell, and we just back ordered on a lot of items. So we don't have the big problems that, as Nick mentioned, as far as the farms and the big numbers of employees. We're a much smaller companies, and between myself, my wife, and 3-4 other guys, we're everything from janitor to CEO. So we do everything from writing orders to delivering, getting to the docks, getting the product and shipping them, calling on retailers, and doing what we need to do to keep on going and moving forward. COVID put a lot of hit on us, definitely, on expanding more towards employees being in the warehouse to ship a product. We had to reduce our time from everyday shipping to 3 times a week or sometimes twice a week, and that did not help much. As far as a little comment on the product quality and the stuff, yes, we do see some quality reduction, not as the best possible available, but it's a handmade product, and retailers and people who rate cigars also tend to forget sometimes that rating one cigar does not give an idea about the whole cigar industry. We have a lot of retailers that we tend to try to educate them about cigars as much as we can, and because not all of them are highly educated about cigars. For example, I have a retailer that ordered a big order at the last PCA show, and right after he received the order, he wanted to return all the product. And when I asked him why, he said, your Yumi packs, when I put the device, the hygrometer in it, it read 99. He failed to turn it upside down, it's 66. And so he did return the product, and we accepted and one of our policy, definitely, retailer doesn't want the product, we'll take it back. It's not the wisest idea to take it back. We try not to sell these, to use them as samples because we don't know the condition that they were used. But it's one of our policy. We guarantee our product. We rather use them differently, and we don't want product that retailers do not support or do not know much about it. We're looking forward for 2022. We have many international markets to open up, waiting on product. And with that, again, Happy New Year to everyone. If anybody have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Well, many thanks for the wonderful thoughts and those comments. And
mentioned my wife couldn't join because she had the COVID 2 days ago, and she's really and breathing and stuff. So otherwise, she would have been here and joining us. So.
Please send our love and regards to Romy as well, and we hope she's feeling better super soon. All the very best. Brief follow-up question, because you just mentioned the international markets, and Andre Diaz posted a wonderful question over on Facebook in regards to the quality. In your experience, do you think that certain markets might get a preferred treatment because of their demand? Is that something that you have seen, experienced with the international markets? Do you even think it's possible to do that, to give like a preferred treatment in terms of quality to certain countries simply because they order more or do more business?
Not at all, not at all. Absolutely not. And I believe Nick will answer the same way. $1 customer or $1 million customer, they receive the same treatment, they receive same quality and same product. We don't fluctuate with that. We don't give any special treatment. That could be a special cigar, but not special quality.
Can I add something to that?
Of course, please, Reinhard, anytime.
In what I hear from people that I talk to, it's happening all the time. Not in terms of quality, but in terms of availability of certain products. If you're a manufacturer and you have a big client in the US and he demands X, Y, and Z, you think twice whether or not you want to deny that order. That happens all the time. And Europe is second, and Asia is probably third, and India is fourth, whatever. It happens, and this is not only specific to the cigar industry. This is all over the economy, all over the world. That's a fact, and that's a natural, I think. And I don't blame anyone, I have to say.
No, I agree with Reinhold with that, but not as far as the quality of cigar. Do we pick and choose who we're going to send to first? Absolutely. Whomever stood with us or our best customers and stuff, they get the first treatment, but not as far as better quality or lesser quality.
Right. Yeah.
And what as much as I would agree that it's always a challenge and big footsteps to fill, speaking after Nick Perdomo, but I would definitely want to comment on a positive note in regards to the flexibility and freedom that you also have as a smaller business without the workforce or without all these other things to worry about, especially when the boom will probably slow down in a couple of months, and everybody's guessing, I believe, as to when this could be. But I still vividly and fondly remember when Steve Saka was here with us at the lounge, and I asked him whether having his own factory is probably an end goal for the manufacturer, where he was like, hell no, I'm happy where I'm at right now with the independence and the freedom and flexibility that I have, and way less headache to worry about. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We definitely have probably more freedom to do what we need to do. Absolutely. And with less workforce, that comes with its own problem. Also, the expand, especially when a company like ours that expanding faster than we're expecting or faster than we can handle. It's a problem. It's a good problem, but still a problem when that expansion is becoming a problem. So that's our main issue. It's expanding faster than we can handle, and we're trying to accommodate as much as we can that expansion the best way possible without hurting our existing clientele, customers, or smokers.
William, what is your perspective on the $1 million question that everybody's trying to guess now? When is this going to end? Does it have to? Will it?
When you say it, what are you referring? Just to make sure I'm on the same page. What are you referring to?
the current rise in demand and those incredible numbers that we're seeing.
I'm not an economist, so it's kind of tough to tell. But historically, it does end, right? Um, I Yeah, because I actually wrote about this exact topic recently, and I didn't have an exact answer, but I ultimately think there's going to be some sort of an adjustment in the next 12 months, for sure. And maybe it's not. Maybe the gross levels don't happen. I don't know if there's a crash in this whole thing. Is what I'm saying. I don't necessarily see that thing because people are buying cigars, and I think ultimately we've seen a lot of new cigar enthusiasts kind of come into the equation here, and I'm kind of, part of me says they're not going to go away. Maybe you'll see, though, people aren't going to buy a box as much as maybe start buying fivers or singles. Maybe some of that happens, but I don't see necessarily people just walking away from it. And even look, we've even seen it with like in New York with legislation and stuff. People find a way to get cigars if they're gonna have to. They find a way to not pay that high tax. They'll find a way to get their cigars. And the other thing I'll just say is, the cigar industry is very resilient. They just seem like when there's adversity, they find a way always to rise from it. And I think that what happened with the pandemic in 2020, it's a great example of that. So I don't see this crash, but I do see a decrease in maybe that growth level for sure.
George, I'm curious as to your perspective. How is this different than what you have experienced and lived through in the 90s?
I was waiting to, I was going to ask permission to say, can I grant some perspective? Two things. First of all, I think Coop is spot on when he says that the industry is resilient, but he also just stated something obvious too, which is that the consumer is resilient and flexible. In other words, they find a way to get around. Look at the business. Two guys and Dave's business exploded when he fled Massachusetts because of their oppressive tax structure and their restrictions on smoking. And all of a sudden he becomes, 3, 4, 5 times bigger than he was before, and more important into the bargain. I don't forecast a crash, but I will say this: if you want to place it in context to the boom of the 90s, exactly what we have been discussing here, labor issues, tobacco, and the pressure to produce, created a marketplace that had a too high a percentage of imperfect product, let's say, to be nice about it, as we described it back then, the Don Nobody cigars, crap. In other words, there's the market will always adjust when there is product that doesn't deserve a home in the best humidors. And I think that's where what we're seeing emerge is a sophisticated consumer group going, oh, this isn't what I expect. This isn't what I want. And they start to shift. Now, in typical boom and bust cycles, you lose a tremendous amount of customers who have embraced it because it's the latest thing to do. That's not where cigars are right now. I don't think at all. So what it becomes is that customers are smarter and more discretionary. And I will also point you back to the 97, 98 end of the boom, which was, let's be very clear, what that did was wash out all the frauds and the pretenders. It did exert some downward pressure on pricing in the short term, but the great manufacturers, guys like Nick, who were just starting to grow, the Padrones, the Fuentes, the Newmans, and I can go on, their business didn't suffer. They didn't experience any lack of demand for what their factory was producing. They saw, in fact, increased pressure because more people wanted their product since they weren't buying this other substandard or what had proved to be a subpar or overpriced offering. So for the players that like Nick, who have a tremendous relationship with his workforce, who are vertically integrated in terms of their stockpiling of raw materials, they're not likely to see the same thing. In other words, their experience is not going to be what a smaller manufacturer has to do. And remember that scale also offers you all kinds of pricing advantages, and there's always pressures that go with it, and you may end up paying more for your raw materials in the short term, and boxes might cost you more than you like for a year or two or something like that. But guess what? Their product continues to sell. And remember, there's also a price component to this. As people start to get into the idea of, okay, I have all these other pressures on my discretionary income, they get much more selective about what they're going to spend it on. So therefore, it means that there may be less adventure, and that can create some pressure on innovation, right? In other words, it's a drag on that force, because people are like, oh, well, why should I, what's my reasoning for creating a new brand when I can barely meet the demand for the product that I'm doing right now that already has a loyal customer base? So guess what? They stay healthy. Retailers are less inclined to take a chance on something because they say, I need this product, which my consumers want. I'm having a hard time keeping enough of it in stock. So let's stay focused on that.
George, just a quick thought that came to my mind now when you said, why would you be incentivized to come up with a new blend if you can't keep up with what you already have? Now, we all know that the number one question when people walk into the humidor is always what's new, right? New? And so it is rather tempting for manufacturers to come up with something new. And what I could imagine is when your stock of raw material is under pressure, that could be an incentive to say, well, if we can't keep up with X, how about we have something else here, even though in little quality or quantity. So we're just going to release a limited run with it, and then whatever comes next.
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, if you're big enough, you can afford to do stuff like that. Also, let's be clear, one of the reasons why people love doing limited edition releases and putting all this storytelling around it is because there's usually an attendant price hike with it. In other words, if you think about it, the most in demand and the super limited edition cigars are always the most expensive things that you find on the shelf in a store. And they're usually at a premium to the rest of the baseline that any particular manufacturer might offer. So yeah, that's a way of addressing that perennial question. But what I'm saying to you is that in general, as you get to these phases where all of a sudden substandard product has come into the marketplace and consumers are recognizing that, and they're going to be the first people, they're the ones that are going to go to the retailer and say, hey, this isn't right. They may not complain and say, I want my money back, but they go, don't sell me that brand again, or this wasn't, this is my favorite cigar and it's not smoking correctly anymore. So the retailers are the front line of experiencing consumer pushback on a decline in quality. And they're also the first people to see that consumers have gotten fed up with waiting for something that's limited production, and it's like an ooh, you got to have this cigar. And they go, yeah, listen, I'm not worried about that anymore. I don't care. I would rather have this cigar that I know and love and that I think you can get, so let me spend my money on that. The problem is that for if you're just looking from a 20,000 feet perspective, when you get to a pause where either inflation and pressure on raw materials, so you have supply chain interruptions, workforce issues, raw materials, agricultural, we're talking about something that goes in cycles. Sometimes there's great crop years, sometimes there aren't. And quantity is always the precursor to a decline in quality. In other words, if you have a low yield, you're going to have a lower percentage of great tobacco in that. So people have to be aware of that. So if all of those things come together and all of a sudden there is less automatic growth, in other words, we got plenty of tobacco, the factory is humming, we can do this and keep shipping and keep expanding. When those pressures combine to slow down your output, it feels like the bottom has dropped out. When all you've been doing is numbers like what Nick and what Fuad was describing, this dramatic growth. Nick, the idea of, listen, there's a lot of people in the cigar business that would love to be able to say, hey, I forecast 25% growth and I actually make it or exceed it, especially when you're a big company that already has volume and you say we can grow by 25%, that's a huge, huge leap. And so when you don't make that, in other words, when you've been doing that 3, 4, 5 years in a row, seeing that kind of growth, and all of a sudden you go, oh, we're only going to grow by 11 or 12%, which a lot of companies, a lot of industries would kill to have 11% growth. And you go, oh my God, 11, 12%, that's so disappointing. It feels completely different. And that's why people go, oh, this is a crash. No, it's not. But you can't help, and then all of a sudden the people are running around going, oh, this is really bad, this is terrible, and there are the alarmist mindset comes into it. So it's important to have perspective about this, and it's really, really important to recognize that the biggest players are the people with the foresight to see this coming, to plan for it and to address it. And what ends up happening is that they harvest a greater and more loyal customer base. And that eases pressure in some things and increases pressure on the small guys. And then what happens is, this is a cycle, this is what's brilliant about the cigar business, is that sparks creativity from the little guy who's flexible and adaptable and goes, oh, well, look, here's what I'm going to do that's different. And boom, they come out with something and the consumers all go, oh, this is the coolest thing since sliced bread. And they buy it for a little while and then 20 other people start imitating. But,
George,
it's not, go ahead.
George. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You made a point about the limiteds, and that's where I have actually seen the biggest decrease in quality and scoring, if you may, on things. And I kind of go back to what some of the comments that were made earlier from Nick and from other folks. If there's tobacco shortages, maybe these limited editions are being made with tobaccos that just aren't as good right now. But, they're able to sell them a certain way. But I think there's definitely something with the limiteds that I'm not seeing. The quality's really gone down in the last 2 or 3 years, in my book, what I've seen. The creativity may be there, how you market it, but the cigars themselves, not so much. Yeah,
the proof of the pudding is always in the eating. If the cigar doesn't live up to the hype, then the increased price tag and the increased effort to get your hands on it is absolutely, the reward factor is gone. In other words, you're like, yeah, I got this. Big deal. Who cares? That's why Coop and Reinhold, you guys are both keenly aware of the fact that consumers are really invested in your decisions and in particular in your end of year evaluations, because they rely on things like top 10, top 20, top 25 to exactly what I'm talking about, which is that they're discretionary income. I don't want to blow $5,000 on cigars over the next 6 months to get the most in-demand product and find out that it's not worth it. So the pressure on a media outlet that focuses on honest evaluations of product becomes even more important, and that's why you have to apply your standards, your judging like a hot knife through butter. You got to go through the bullshit. You got to go through the marketing hype. You got to go through the romance, and even in some instances, the trade dress, which can be beautiful. You know, we've all seen tremendous packaging, beautiful bands and boxes and stuff, and you look and you go, "Oh my God, this is fantastic!" But the whole project is an empty suit because the tobacco at the core of it, you know, what's wearing all that fancy trade dress is bullshit. So it's incumbent upon you to maintain your standards, your integrity, and your honesty, and say, listen, you know, this is a disappointment. In past years, this company has done X, Y, Z, and it's been really, really great, and we've enjoyed it. But this year, maybe not so much.
Yep.
And sometimes that means that you have to be you got to be tough on your friends. You got to be tough on people that you know and love and respect. But you know, you can't let your closeness affect your ability to evaluate the product, because, by the way, the average consumer walking into a cigar store doesn't have a direct friendship with Nick Perdomo or Carlito or Guillermo Leon or Jonathan Drew. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on. So we sometimes we got to put the hammer to these guys.
Yep. Yeah, I
Can I
totally
just
agree.
add a twist to this?
Yes, please.
Sorry. So from a macro point of view, the way we're looking at this is obviously the discussion has been predominantly about New World or non-Cuban cigars. The difference that we have, and I don't mean to split the world into different parts, but different markets do have sort of different dynamics as far as they're concerned. What is happening with the quality and the overall supply of Cuban cigars, at least in the Middle East and North Africa, is going to provide a lot of longevity or a lot of demand elasticity as far as non-Cuban or New World cigars are concerned. It's going to take a long time for people, I believe, for them to see any changes or major changes in the negative part of New World cigars, due to the fact of the amount of negative or bad quality that they're getting as far as the Cuban cigars are concerned, especially with the new productions. So I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but I just believe I'm not justifying anything. I'm curious as to what your take would be on something like this, and this is obviously a point for everyone to give their feedback.
Reinhard, can I say something?
Of course, please.
You're describing something which is a dynamic that's been in play for decades. Maybe not. Maybe we haven't had bold enough cigar media to examine it in the light of day. But the truth is that the problems and the pressures, whether you ascribe them as organic or political, that Cuba has experienced, has always been a massive open door for marketplaces with open-minded consumers to become acquainted with the huge array of brilliant cigars that are in the marketplace as a result of the Cuban diaspora. You know, I think it's really funny how people go, oh, New World and Old World and talking about cigars, because tobacco is a New World aspect as long as you're defining the Old World as Europe and the Asian market, obviously going even further back. But so those the aspect of those marketplaces recognizing the viability of non-Cuban brands is tremendous growth for them. In other words, the discovery process of a market that is relatively naive regarding Nicaraguan, Dominican, Honduran, Costa Rican, even, in the old days, you would have thrown in Jamaica and Mexico too. But, those parts of the world have nothing but fun ahead of them if they embrace the idea that there is a tremendous array of super high quality cigars competing for a consumer's dollar. And in many times, in many places, and this is, we're not talking about taxation, but in many times, those cigars have a huge price advantage over Cuba. And the more Cuba focuses on limited edition and regional editions and their attendant higher prices, the greater people will discover, oh my God, the emperor has no clothes. So by comparison, other brands are like they're a joy. And once you open yourself up to the notion that yes, in fact, not just the cigar making, but the tobacco growing and the blending skills, and the construction, in other words, the quality of the workforce is up to this 5-century-old standard that Cuba established. Man, it's just fun. So in a way, for manufacturers, that's just another, for non-Cuban manufacturers, that's just another aspect of pressure on their production right now, because they have to say, okay, let me allocate more to the international market. But again, if you're having trouble with your workforce, if you're having trouble with tobacco, you're less inclined to take a percentage of your inventory and put it into a market where it may or may not boom immediately.
Agreed.
But it's certainly exciting to watch. In other words, I love looking at cigars like Padron and the Fuentes, and even Davidoff. Davidoff has led the way in crashing down the snobbery standard that there's Havana cigars and then there's everything else somewhere below them. So whenever you reach into a new market and you start to watch the consumers respond, it's really a joy to see them discover. And they go through things that are, like to us might be old hat. Like, we know that Pepin makes great cigars that are, Cuban-like in their personality, or we know that you pick your company. It's like the discovery process once removed. In other words, when another consumer group in a different part of the world is going through that, it's fun. It's a great lens to watch.
I'm telling you, it's been a great show in our part of the world. It's been mind-opening. It's been mind-boggling. It's and the conversion you're getting of people, whether getting into cigars for the first time or moving from other brands or Cuban brands to non-Cuban brands, and opening that door that everybody's been telling them, don't open that door. There's a beast out there, and then they go and they're like, my God, that's the most fucking amazing beast I've ever seen in my life. I mean,
exactly right. No, it's beautiful. That's so well said. And the one point that you made that's really, really sharp is especially that when it's new consumers who don't have a lifetime of bias built in, and they're people that are just beginning to their cigar journey, to put it in a brief way, and they discover not just that the quality is there, but that there's this diversity that isn't as monolithic as what you have in modern day Havana production. They're like, oh God, this is great, because there are cigars made for every flavor and for every taste preference. And so being the person who's the gatekeeper for that is really, really fun to say, oh, you like that? Wait till you try this. It's a joy.
Well said.
I'm glad you brought it up, though. That's great.
Thank you.
Fun part of that, actually, it's having people move from smoking fake Cuban cigars to other cigars.
Oh,
right, exactly. You know what? They're harder to convince. Most of the time, they're harder to convince, because people who are smoking fake Cuban cigars are so committed to the bullshit story, the baloney that they have attached to why this particular cigar is absolutely legit. Moving them off of that is it's unrewarding in the beginning, at least. Oh, there's the man. Speaking of a guy who's been teaching people around the world about why there's more than one place that produces the greatest. Jose.
Hey, George. Everyone know I've been listening to the show for a while, and it was great to see everybody, especially Nick, that is now a grandfather, un abuelo, and I think that's changed his life. But listen, there's a couple of things. I don't want to get into the Cuban thing because I think what George said, Rod said, is it's more than that. But I want to go back a little bit to the Boon days, and I'll tell you why. Something nobody ever talks about. And George and I and Coop and a lot of people and Reinhard, we've talked about it. If we consider this a boom, let's say it's a boom, and you look at the boom of '97, and you look at the boom of today, cigars today, even though there's some people have been cutting corners, but not as bad as it was end of '96 and '97. I mean, 80% of the cigars were BS. And I remember when Cigar Aficionado did the interview of me and they asked about the boom. I said, there were cigars being sold for $10 that were not worth 50 cents. And some people that were not worth 50 cents, I said. and a lot of people said, you shouldn't have said that. I said, why? Because it's the truth. But the other thing that nobody talks about, and this I want to hear from Reinhold, from George, from Reinhard, and from Coop, is this. People in 1992, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, up till maybe 2000 something, people didn't have a clue about cigars. They read the ratings, they read the magazines, but I'm bringing this up because to me, one of the big difference today, and has been in the last 5 to 6 years, that today the consumer is more educated, the consumer is more demanding because of the job the social media has done, that the magazines continue to do, to bring out. Plus the people go to Nicaragua, go to Honduras, go to Pro Cigar in Dominican, go to Cuba, go to Costa Rica, go to Mexico. Some have even traveled to Ecuador. So I personally believe that the consumer today is more demanding because the consumer today is more educated, is more sophisticated. So I want to hear what, we'll start with George, which is who's older than George and Reinhold?
Nobody. Well, Setzer, you're so right. But here's the thing. There's no question that the consumer is better educated. Let's put it this way. They got a whole lot more knowledge. They have a whole lot more awareness. They're not always necessarily applying it in the best way. You know, in other words, there's a lot of guys that are like, they can recite you chapter and verse about what kind of tobacco it is and everything else, but they can't separate who's really telling them the truth and where the cigars are proving to be at this super high level of quality. But there's no question that the body of cigar media and social media has made it not only just disseminated on a more broad basis, but has reached people who would be, you and I both know this going back. There were all kinds of people who'd be like, no, I'm not going to be caught dead reading a cigar magazine. I'm not going to spend my time at this. But now, they got their phone, they got their tablet, they have this time. Yeah, they're absorbing cigar information and opinion, because the opinion is a large part of it. But they're filtering it through their own experience. It has created a customer that is much more resistant to bullshit and significantly more sophisticated in their buying decisions. So you see these people, and again, and this is one of the things that I think is happening in other markets around the world. People are like, okay, so look, I've heard all the story and I've heard all the mythology, but guess what? Now I've actually got the opportunity to compare. I'd rather buy this cigar with Cameroon wrapper. I want to taste what real Connecticut shade is like, and all of a sudden it's possible for them to exercise that. So it's a really, really happy time in that respect. It is that we have a consumer who is absolutely ready to judge. And your initial approach to this was exactly right. As we reached the peak. As we hit the wall in the boom years of the 90s, the market was flooded with it doesn't matter whether it was a $10 cigar worth 50 cents or whether it was a $12 cigar that should have been sold for $5, because either way, those cigars ended up lacking a home. In other words, the people weren't buying them. So it took a couple of years, but all that got washed out of the marketplace and placed even more pressure on the producers, to meet the standards. And you started to see that judgment make a difference in what was happening in the marketplace. And I think we're at that moment magnified to a power of 10 right now. In other words, the intervening years have made consumers more assured of their knowledge and less reliant. You and I, we've talked about this before, how in the old days when the ratings came out in the top 25, especially, people would rush into the stores and say, I got to have this, I got to have this, I got to have this. Now it's a much more measured response. People are waiting to hear Coop's #1 cigar of the year. They're waiting to see what the Cigar Journal has awarded, and they're waiting to see what Cigar Aficionado has named in the top 25 and sort out their own reactions to it, as opposed to just blindly going out and saying, I have to have this, without regard to whether or not it's the right cigar for them. So to me, that's huge progress, and it shows where the business can only grow, because the more sophisticated your customer gets, the more sophisticated his demands are, and the greater opportunity that makes for manufacturers. Reinhold, do you see it the same way?
I have to agree with George in most of the way. What happened over the past 20, 30 years is no manufacturer, in my belief, today would be able to bullshit a customer like they did 25 years ago during the boom. I think that's a fact. During the boom, people bought cigars no matter what, because you had to have cigars. Today, most of the people know what they tend to like and know what they tend to, that they want to experience. They're very educated compared to back then. And you cannot be as consumers anymore. This is one of the big things. The other question I want to stress is about Cuban cigars. The quality of Cuban cigars is not a question of climate, also of course of climate and so forth, but it's mainly a political question. If someone in the Cuban government decides we're going to produce 120 million cigars, they might make 70 million or 60 million rather than 100, but they have to push that out no matter what. So that's the problem of Cuban cigars. It's a political question, not a question of lack of tobacco or lack of, maybe a lack of resources, but not a lack of knowledge. They know how to produce cigars, but there are bigger things than that keep them from doing so. I think that today we are in a wonderful situation because consumers know what they want, they know about the product, they know about the different tobacco, they know what tobacco does to the cigars, wrapper, binder, filler, and they know about the hand craftsmanship that is involved. And I think we are really in good times in that sense, that the consumer is demanding a high quality product, no matter what. And you guys like Nick, the Fuentes, the Padrones, whoever, they are delivering. And even though times are difficult with logistics, and lack of tobacco and lack of boxes, you guys manage to deliver one way or the other. And I think this is wonderful. It makes it probably a little more difficult for the smaller guys because they don't have the resources. But when you look at the so-called boutique cigars, there are so many who come out with great products, and consumers are thriving for that. They may not be available for a long time, but the consumer really appreciates a good cigar today, no matter if it comes out of a big factory or a small boutique factory. They acknowledge the quality and the thrive for quality of cigars. And I think that's a very good development in the cigar industry at whole.
And there's very little price resistance for the cigars that are acknowledged as great. That's one of the things that always happens in a down market. In other words, that you have resistance to either price increases or the release of more expensive, more exclusive. We attach whatever phrase you want to it, but we don't have that right now. Instead, our consumer is like, no. I only want this quality, so I'll pay for it. And they'll follow the brand up the ladder.
I agree. Totally. Yeah.
Over to Brian in LA. He had a question.
Hi, good afternoon. I've got rain and champagne in LA. Cheers. Cheers. Happy New Year. I'm just a consumer, so I guess first, thanks for all the compliments that I'm a very sophisticated and educated consumer. That's very nice of you to say about me. I hope this is a question that is relevant for manufacturers and media and professors. In terms of the boom or growth currently, and making forecasts and predictions and decisions based on those forecasts, how hard is it, and how much do you think it's connected to the pandemic? You hear a lot of people talking about now's a great time because people are at home. It's true for me. I smoke more than I did before. Everyone they're at home and they have time, and we don't know if that's going to change. So the unpredictability of the pandemic, does that connect with the unpredictability to the market? Like, how much do you think these two things go hand in hand? Anyway.
Hey, Brian, first of all, you're living proof that the customer is more sophisticated, because I guarantee you 25 years ago, we wouldn't found a guy with a glass of champagne in his hand in his backyard. So, that's pretty good. Are you smoking? My one question is, when you say champagne, are you actually drinking some brilliant sparkling wine from California, or are you drinking a product from France?
It's probably not that amazing. The cigar is definitely better than the champagne. This is something I got from, I don't know, honestly. It's from Bevmo.
Oh, yeah. Cool. But so let me say one thing that is, again, I'm just speaking as the old geezer in the room. Cigars find a way. So, and the reason for that is because a cigar is a great thing to come home to and reward yourself after a really good day, something successful, the right occasion. It also happens to be the perfect instrument to adjust or improve your attitude after a bad day, whether it's inside at your home office or in some corporate park with 1,000 other drones. So just because at some point in the future we might all return to an environment where we're commuting to work, don't forget there's a whole lot of people who love smoking in their cigar. It's their absolute private moment, whether it's on their way home or in the morning. That's like, oh, it's the time when I most look forward to it. So the truth is that it sort of goes back to the old Mark Twain quote, right? I only smoke cigars on 2 occasions, when I'm with people and when I'm alone. So, the thing is, that there's no bad time to enjoy a cigar. There's no bad way to enjoy a cigar, except if there's people around you who are going to be unhappy about it, because then they're going to dampen your mood. And what that means is that no matter how the environment changes, look, so you have less at home time in your backyard because you actually have to return to a slightly different work model. Well, that means you can go to cigar bars more. Right? In other words, there can be more social gatherings. So there's more occasions where we're going to celebrate and hang out as friends instead of having to do it this way by Zoom. That's my take anyway.
If I could say something, that's an excellent question, Brian. This is Nick. I noticed in 19 when the pandemic first hit, and everybody was closing down, we saw this big up spike. And I would talk to people and they would say, hey, I'm smoking more than ever. I don't want to be around my wife. I don't want to be around the kids, whatever their thing was, but they would smoke more. But, we were just looking at numbers yesterday and our biggest growth in 2021 was the state of Florida. And if you know about the great state of Florida, we've really never closed down and everything has been wide open here, yet our growth is skyrocketing here. And there's a twofold reason. First of all, everybody that was locked down got the hell out of there and came to our state of Florida. Just where I live in Miami, we have swelled by over 2 million people in the last 70 days. There's more New Jersey, New York, and California and Texas tags than I've ever seen in my life. And there's something it's kind of an aberration where you're seeing all these people coming down. So I think because the state is expanding so much with so many people coming down to try to live freedom and try to live back to a normal life again, I think that cigar smoking is really up on an uptick here. So I thought that was kind of strange how Florida really just blew up in its sales. And we've been strategically looking at all these different states, and it's been a good thing. And, in both instances, selfishly, but I think you're right. I think a lot of people, because you're staying home and you're drinking champagne, you are smoking more cigars. I talk to people in a lot of states like, Illinois and New York and California. And those states, people say I smoke more than I ever have. But I'm also seeing it in the wide open states like Texas and, in Florida, where people said, when we were locked down for a month or two, I used to smoke 1 cigar. Now I smoke 3. And you know what? I haven't stopped. Now what I do, kind of like George says, now I go to work. And when I come home, I might stop at the cigar bar. Now I stop at my local cigar lounge. Now I get together with my friends. I was just talking to a buddy of mine in New Jersey. It's cold. He built a smoking lounge in his garage, and now him and his buddies get together. But the whole thing of it is consumption's up, and it's music to a cigar manufacturer's ears, to say the least. And getting back to earlier where we were talking about supply side, and quality issues. My dad always said, if you build a quality product, quantity will come right behind it. And I think that's, it's sad that we're starting to see people rush things. And I was there where George was in the mid 90s where, guys were making cigars out of their, in their backyards and stuff, and rushing things. And it's sad because I think, you got to have some couth and you got to have some principles. And, it takes 10 years to get a customer. It takes 3 seconds to lose one. And Reinhard and George hit it right on the head. You guys know a lot more today than you knew back in 1997. And, I'm a picky son of a bitch when I buy things too. If I buy something and it doesn't perform, I'm bound never to buy it again. And I'm real cognizant about that, when we come out with a product, whether it's new or old, we want to make sure it comes out of the gate right. Or why even, my mom always said, if it's not right, don't do it. And I'm just a big believer in that. We talk about tasting panels and this and that. When we release something, our tasting panel in Nicaragua, Miami, has over 370 years of smoking experience. So to come to a consensus with a Perdomo smoking panel is really, really tough. So once we come to a consensus, we're pretty sure that at least 8 out of 10 people are going to enjoy it, because some people like milder stuff, some people like heavier stuff. We get it. But as cigar manufacturers, we also have to make cigars to what you, the consumer, wants and what you, the retailer, can sell. So a lot of people will ask me, why do you make 54s and 60 ring gauges? Well, in a perfect world, I'd make 5x42, 6x44, and I'd be hanging out at the beach all day long. It's
7x47.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 7 by.
Right.
You're talking about 30 pounds to make 1,000 cigars. When I make a 6x60, you're at 83 pounds of filler to make 1,000 cigars. Right. I can't charge you 3 times more for 6x60. So when we make a bigger cigar, in a lot of instances, we do it for you, the consumer, because that's what you're requesting, and you do get a lot of bang for your buck. But as far as the cigar manufacturer, guys will come up to me and go, I don't know why you make a big ring gauge cigar on this. It's because that's what you want. And we make a lot more money making smaller type formats than we make bigger formats, but we have to work what the consumer wants. And today, people are looking for 2 things. They're looking for bolder tasting cigars, and they're looking for bigger ring gauges. And I see people when they shop, because I go to the cigar stores all over the country. I visited this year alone over 474 cigar stores. And one of the things I noticed is a guy would look at a cigar and he would say, well, this is $7. And, for a half inch more, for 30 cents, I'm going to spend the extra 30 cents. And he's looking at what's in his wallet. And I'm cognizant of that too. So, it's important. So, it's a twofold, kind of way. And I thought it was a really good question on your part, Brian. Thank you.
May I add something there? It's a good question also.
Hey, thanks. That's a good point.
I think there are different combination that led to that boom, the cigar boom, not just be sitting at home and smoking more cigars. We're smoking more cigars because we like these cigars. I think we all agree this is not an addiction, as some people like to call it. So the combination, in my own account, combination of great cigars, manufacturer putting great cigars from I'm not going to count manufacturers right now, but each one of them is overpassing and putting cigars there. The education and the engagement of the Zoom meetings that we did not have before. We would have not be sitting here right now if it wasn't for the Zoom meeting and each one of us is smoking cigar in different time zone and stuff like this. So that created more. And also that definitely the enjoyment of the cigars, because you are home, smoking 1 instead of 3 instead of 1. So it's a combination of all of it. And on top of it, definitely a better educated consumers that I totally agree with each one of them here. We have a better educated consumers that ever existed from the way before. So that's why I believe created that boom of the cigar in the cigar industry, which I don't expect it to go down. And I think George mentioned if it's going to go from 25 to 11, some may consider it it's a disaster, but actually it's not. So we're going to see that probably, but the boom is going to stay. It's always educate and engagement. That's what it's going to create. Keep on going with the cigar industry.
Yeah.
So right.
Those are really good points. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. George, turns out I just read it. It's an American sparkling wine. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah, Nick,
just you're just going to get visited by a representative of the French government going, no, it's not champagne, blah blah blah. Tough. Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. I'm with you,
Nick,
man.
You know what's funny?
You.
Nick, thank you. Yeah, I'll spend my money on the cigar.
Exactly.
Nick, I got a friend.
Buy a Perdomo champagne.
To work for Disney from LA. Yeah. How much do you think the stress component is attached to it as well? Like, we live in stressful times. Everybody's stressed about viruses, and so we smoke to calm down. I know it's done wonders for me psychologically, the cigars and the meetings. And if there comes a time later on when maybe people are less stressed. I don't think I'm going to switch back. Like you said, the cigars are resilient and the people are, but maybe as people's lives are less stressful, there's a decrease. I don't know.
Well, I think cigars are celebratory also. And I think people are going to celebrate when they can go back to normal life. You got to remember during the boom in '97, and George knows it well. I think we had imported one year up to almost, I think it was almost 500 million cigars. The premium cigars came in. This year we're looking at maybe 275, 280. It's not even. It's almost a little less. I mean, it's almost half of what it was, and we're talking about having a boom again. I remember Bob Franzbach, God rest his soul, who used to own Thompson Cigars. He flew on his jet in the '90s. He couldn't get any cigars. He flew down. He said, "Do you have any cigars?" And I said, "Sir, I have 43 boxes of cigars in my factory here on Flagler Street." And I said, "You could take every one of them." And he said, "You're gonna sell them to me all?" And I said, "Yeah, because I know this is not realistic. We're cigar makers, not drug dealers. This is not realistic. And I know that you're going to be in business," because at the time they were in business for like 75 years. Yep. And he was instrumental in my life. He always talks about it when he was alive, that he always liked to do business with me because I was one of the few guys that was more realistic about what was happening. And I knew this wasn't going to sustain, but I knew that having a partner like Thompson's at the time was very sustainable for my business in the future, even though I was extremely small at the time. And listen, like the gentleman from Hyman Solomon, we started very small too. We started out of a garage, my wife and I. I remember when Johnny Oliva sold me my first bale of Honduran tobacco. It was $369. The UPS guy brought up to the front of my garage. It was in a burlap bag, and he asked me if it was marijuana. And I said, "No, man, it's tobacco." And back in those days, we didn't even have cell phones with cameras. I called my wife and I said, bring the camera. And she said, "What is it?" And I said, "I bought my first bale of tobacco." And I still have the picture. I'm standing up like I was Superman. So, you got to start somewhere. And guys like George, he saw me when I first started. So, for the guys who are boutique makers that make cigars, I mean, listen, I was there. I root for every one of you. I'm a capitalist. I think that, competition is great. I think starting a business is tremendously hard because of the risk factors and so on. But if you work hard and you plug through it, believe me, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. People ask me, when did you think you made it? And I said, last year. And someone said, "You got to be kidding me." And I said, "No, I did." And they said, "Well, how did that happen?" I said, "Every time we do factory tours, everybody always talks about how big the facilities are. And you can envision we have almost 1.5 million square feet just in our inbound facility in Esteli. We have 1,732 workers. But to me, everything is a department. So, I go into the rolling room, I see the good, bad, and the ugly. I go into packaging, I see the good, bad, and the ugly. But they're in rooms. So it was a Saturday, and I told Arthur Kemper, my vice president, I said, "I want to grab 2 chairs, and I just want to sit and look." So I went to the sorting and selecting facility. And at the time, there was, I think, 630 women that were sorting and selecting tobacco. And all you hear is this whoosh going back and forth. And Reinhard was there, and he knows it. And I said to Arthur, I said, "Did you ever hear 638 women not talking and being so disciplined in one setting where you don't hear them all talk?" And I said, "Holy shit." I said, "There's a lot of people here." And then I went to the rolling room and I said, "Oh my God, there's a lot of people here." And I remember telling Arthur, I said, "Arthur, you know what the most beautiful thing about this?" He said, "The infrastructure, the vertical integration." I said, "No, the company is completely debt free. We owe not a penny to a banker, to anybody." And I think that's where I said, I think we're doing okay. And I think when you run a business, and George and Reinhold and the guys that have businesses understand what I'm saying, you almost have to lead like you're from behind all the time because you want to be at your best because you're as good as your last cigar. And it really is true. It does take 10 years to get a customer and 3 seconds to lose one. And when there's a complaint on a Perdomo cigar, who answers every single one of those complaints? It's me. I actually call the guys. The biggest problem I have is it's sad too when you really think about it. I called a guy recently in Scottsdale, Arizona. He had bought a box of champagne Super Toros, and he said that he had smoked 2 of them and they didn't draw. So I said, "Wow, we draw test every cigar. We mark underneath the wrapper," and I'm explaining to him. But I asked him a question. I said, did you use a punch cut, a bullet cut, or a flat cut? And he said, I use no cutter. And I said, what do you mean? I said, you pick it with your nail? He said, no, this is my first box of cigars. And when I bought it from the retailer, I assume it's like the drugstore. They have holes in them and you just puff on them. I said, no, you have to have a cutter. But I said, in reality, it's really not your fault. A great retailer like George back at Georgetown Tobacco would have said, is this your first box of cigars? May I sell you a cutter? Let me show you how the cutter works. You're
Right.
gonna need a lighter. You're gonna need fuel. You don't get that anymore. Now it's about just selling a box. And this guy was a rookie, didn't know what he was doing. But you know what I did? I sat with him, I talked to him, I showed him everything, and I gave him two pieces. You don't have to do that. I said, I want to. And then I had another guy recently call me and I told him who I was, and he told me I was full of shit, that it wasn't me. And he had taken the band off the cigar cold and he ripped the wrapper. And I was trying to explain to him, you got to let the barrel heat up before you take the wrapper. He called back 3 days later and said, hey, I was talking to a guy who said it was Nick Perdomo. And he said, yeah, he's the guy he's the one who takes care of all the complaints. And he said, wow, I couldn't believe the owner. I'd like to apologize to him. So he got on the phone. And I said, you don't have to apologize to me. I said, it's sad that an owner wouldn't call you if he had a problem with the problem. Well, you're busy. I said, well, everybody's busy, but I wasn't busy enough to not sell you a box of cigars, and I shouldn't be not busy enough to have a concern if you have a problem with a product that we manufacture. So I think we have a disconnect sometimes where everybody's busy, but you shouldn't be too busy that you can't talk to a customer or consumer. So, we have a YouTube channel and we teach, how to properly cut and light a cigar, how to get the most enjoyment of a cigar, all kinds of things from A to Z. And we think it's important. And I also think that Reinhard and all these Zoom shows are phenomenal for stuff like this. And the reason I'm coughing is because I have COVID, and but I'm totally asymptomatic. I mean, it's funny. I was talking to my doctor. I just had a little cough, and he said this is kind of like the common cold. And so far it's been great. It's been 5 days, but I had a cold 2 months ago. It was a hell of a lot worse than this. So, but that was a great question. It's also great to be able to hear seasoned vets like George and Reinhold and Jose and Coop and all these guys. I'm enjoying the hell out of this, just learning from you guys. So thanks for this too.
Hey, Nick, are you quarantining?
Yeah, I am. Janine's in one side of my apartment. I'm on the other side of my apartment. I actually feel great. But I want to protect it. This is like a cold.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it's actually less than a cold. I've been going to the beach every day trying to get natural vitamin D, and I feel great, to be honest with you. I mean, the only good news about this is my doctor said that if you get the Omicron, you're pretty much absolved from the regular COVID-19, which was terrible, which Jose got, if I'm not mistaken, a year ago, which I know was really bad, or Delta, which was worse. As this mutates, my doctor explained to me, he said most people have it. They don't even know they have it. The only reason they know they have it is because one of the strains has a little bit of influenza, a little bit of the common cold. So nobody really knows. I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to freak out my workers, but they're freaked out by me not being at work because I'm a workaholic. I usually don't miss work, but
Right.
now I feel fantastic, but I'm staying away from my wife, which is hard. And the hardest thing is staying away from my daughter and my granddaughter. It's the hardest thing, but I'm going to test tomorrow. I think hopefully I'll be negative, and I can go back to life because I want to get back into it. But yeah, I got vaccinated, I did the whole thing, but it's been extremely mild. And I've had 2 friends that have had it, and I've had 2 workers that just got it, and I've been in close contact with them, talked to them, and all of them feel great. They just took the test. One of them had a lower extremity ache in his calf and took it and tested positive. Who knows? I just read something right now where they're saying these tests could all be erroneous. Who knows? It's a crazy thing. But I'm happy to be here, and happy to learn, to listen to a lot of you guys and hear some of the stories. And I'm enjoying this very much.
Nick, many thanks for those wonderful words, and all the very best to you. And please send our regards and our blessings to Janine and
To
to
Janine.
the family as well.
Absolutely, I sure will. I sure will.
We have so many questions piling up, and I do apologize if we do not manage to get all of them into the show, but Ian was waiting for such a long time, and I would love to hear his question. And then Sai, my brother, up next.
I love Sai.
Thank you, guys, and really enjoying the chat. And 3 weeks ago, I spent 2 hours with the guy smoking cigars and drinking beer, and he got COVID and I didn't. I attributed it to the cigar smoke, but that may just be luck. I was going to talk about Cuban cigars. On the day after Christmas, I had a Cohiba Bahique, which I'd got from Cuba, and so it was a genuine cigar. And I have to say, it was a very ordinary smoke, nothing exceptional. If I were to buy that in the UK today, I would pay $120 for one stick, which was just crazy. And I'd much rather have 10 of Nick's cigars or Hiram and Solomon or anything else. And I just, I was listening to you, Nick, about the the expansion of your company. I think in 3 years you've doubled your production, and I just hope you can keep the quality up, because they're great cigars, and I think it's important to keep the quality up. And also, I hope consumers can get it to enjoy the narrower gauge cigars, because I've gone off the 6x60s, and I would rather have 52 or less. I think there's more flavor, and I think they're actually better cigars. I get more enjoyment out of them than out of a massive cigar. So please keep doing what you're doing, and if the price goes up a little bit, and I think it will, that's fine in a sense. We're used to paying huge prices over here. If the Nicaraguan workers earn an extra, $5 a day, that's good for them, good for everybody. So, don't worry about putting the prices up a bit, because you've got a great product, and compared to what we get from Cuba over here, it's superb. So please keep up the good work.
Thank you. And then, a lot of the reason that we could increase our production was the amount of stored and aged cigars we had. We've always overproduced, like I said earlier. So it's not like the output grew 100%. Like, for example, I'm not going to say a number, but let's say we sold 10 million cigars in a year. I'd always have, 18 or 19 million. And believe it or not, I have a tremendous amount of inventory and stock. Coop and Reinhard will tell you, we just built a new 22,000 square foot aging room, and we literally have it completely full. It has over 10 million cigars just in that room. So as our production is moving, we're continuously being able to build stores, because like I said earlier, a little over 5 years ago, I was warned that I would start diminishing with the growth that we were having from the mid-teen years that we had with the company. And I think our guys did a great job by opening up 2 new cigar facilities, which was not easy to do, and start from scratch and build it up. And I think that's why we did it. I think our quality is paramount, and I know our quality is exceptional. And listen, when we can't grow because of a quality issue, I'm not growing. There's no reason to it, because if you put out something substandard in, you're not going to buy it. And it's funny, if you love something, you'll tell 10 people. If you don't love something, you'll tell 100 people. You just told the world. And look, a cigar, $120 for a cigar is ludicrous, but you can buy a half box of Perdomo cigars for $120, and every one of them are going to draw and burn right, just depending on the blend of the flavor you like. But now, my old saying, it takes 10 years to get a customer and 3 seconds to lose one, that sticks right here, and that we're not going to release anything unless we're totally confident. If you look on any part of the bottom of our boxes, I know who rolled the cigar, I knew who the sort team was, I knew every single issue. And with the amount of cigars that we made in 2021, if you could venture to guess how many complaints I've got, I'd like to Just guess. How many complaints do you think Perdomo cigars have received in 2021?
10.
8.
8. Okay.
And 5 of them were operator error. I know it for a fact. And so let's say it was 3, and let's say 10% or 10 times the people didn't complain or didn't call, it'd be 30 complaints. It's less than a box of cigars. It's too much, but it's a handmade product. But we also have technology today that we can use. And for example, we have draw testing stations. We can draw test up to 19 cigars per second. And Reinhard and Coop and the guys who've been to the factory have seen that we have a massive facility where we actually draw test every single cigar we make. And it doesn't impede the workforce by any stretch of the imagination because of the way the calendar date runs. And I'm not going to waste hours of your time explaining how we do it, but every cigar must draw before it goes into a box of cigars. If it doesn't, it shouldn't be smoked. And you shouldn't have a bad experience with any cigar, whether it costs $120 or $10, you know? So listen, I think of guys like you every single day of the minute. That's the truth. So count on me.
Thanks, Nick. And I've never had a bad cigar from you. And I wish I could get more of them. So when I'm next in the States, I should be.
Are you in the UK?
I am, yes.
Yeah, very soon you'll be getting them.
Great.
Okay, thank you so much, Ian. Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you.
Let's head over to Cy Sweeney.
Good evening, all. And I just want to say happy festivities and happy new year. And a big congratulations to Nick on baby Stella.
Thank you, Cy.
I posted a few things for you on that. You know, we posted it around. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it. My dad always said, if you knew how much fun grandchildren were, he would have skipped us. I understand it now.
I don't blame him. No, I'm only messing. I'm only joking. Brian nicked my question earlier, but I did have a couple other little questions there. And what was it? I have to say about what Reinhard said about just a quick one there about the Cuban situation and being political, because there is some good ones out there. Like there's some great Cubans out there, same as there is some great Nicaraguans, Dominicans, Costa Ricans, Ecuadorians, etc. But so I think there's a place for everybody, and I think it's important that people don't lose the fact that Cuba started off doing with the cigars. A lot of people wouldn't be blending now if it wasn't for Cuba, you know. So it's great that we have. I don't like to call them New World cigars, non-Cubans. It's fantastic that we have them, because I grew up in an environment where I grew up in a tourist town that had a lot of Americans. So my cousins, Johnny Crowley and that, who had bars, would provide Cuban cigars for them when they came over in the 80s, 70s, 80s and 90s. So I used to pinch the odd one, as they say. But and then up to the pandemic, all I smoked was Cubans, because that's all you can get here. And then, of course, I went into all sorts of non-Cubans, and I loved them. There's some fantastic ones I found out there, and I think every cigar is an adventure to me. But getting back to the question, that's only my tuppence worth of that. Getting back to the question, if what was I going to say? Which one was the Brian's question during COVID? Yeah, I think with the new with the political situation, this one's for Nick. Are you worried at all about the Nicaraguan with the political situations in some of the third world countries affecting your distribution or your manufacturing of cigars in the future, or the near future, or further down the line?
Well, it's always on the back of our mind, but I will say that the Nicaraguan government has been very good to the cigar manufacturers and the business in general. They've left us alone. I think they know what an important resource it is to their country. You can envision in the northern part of Nicaragua, over 50% of the people in the northern coast of Nicaragua are somehow involved in the cigar industry. And if you take towns like Esteli, Condega, the Jalapa Valley, you have upwards to over 90% of the people that work in the cigar industry. So I feel real good about it. The one that I'm most scared about is my government, the American government, who They're continuously trying to regulate and taxes. George knows it really well. I think that's the thing. But it's as relentless as the cigar smoker and tenacious as he is, the cigar manufacturer today has to be the same way, because we have to fight for our livelihood and our rights also. I mean, we have a legal product, and with guys like Dick Durbin and I could go on that are just really anti-tobacco zealots, and seeing what's happening in New Zealand. It's something that we definitely have our eye on, and we just got to fight through it. But I can speak for my country as Americans. Americans really fight for their rights, and we usually win. And but it always stays in the back of our mind, side, that's for sure. Look, I was in Ireland 3 years ago. I was appalled that you really couldn't smoke anywhere. I thought you could smoke everywhere in Ireland. I went to a back of a bar with a bunch of guys that were in a cigar society in Ireland who had found out I was in Dublin and asked if I could come over and smoke a cigar with them. So we sat in this little corner in the back of a bar in a yard, and Janine and I hung out with these 12 guys, and we smoked cigars. Like you say, it was a glorious day in Ireland that day, and we had a great time. But I was really shocked that it was really hard to be able to smoke a cigar in Ireland. I thought it'd be easy, but it wasn't.
You see, especially Dublin City is a bummer, but if you get out past the city to the towns, and they've built a lot of the towns like Selbridge, Maynooth, outside, just not far from Dublin, Kilcock have built very big smoking areas on the pubs now with TVs, with everything. And it's just like, you don't even think you're going out of the pub. So Dublin City is a bit tight on it, all right. But the country areas are more relaxed, the country towns. And just getting back to a little thing there on with the supply demand issues and the aging of tobacco and different things that are going on at the minute. Oh yeah, but another thing about that, I mean, you were saying Americans fight for their rights, and I think it's important for the cigar manufacturers to try and fight as well for the rights of the people that's livelihood is the tobacco. I mean, I'd rather see somebody in Nicaragua, in the Dominican Republic, being happy, rolling, making money, than having that industry squashed to a certain level that they have to go out and do things that are detrimental to them, their families, their health. In third world countries, at least it's their livelihood, and that's the most important thing. We can all smoke, we can all sit here and enjoy the beautiful cigar, but it's their bread and butter. It's what put foods on their children's table, and it's important that they're looked after and that they are fought for, And even I put that into the stuff that I put in as Cigar Rights Ambassador for Ireland. I put in about the legislation of that into the government here. I mean, half of them probably don't even know where Costa Rica is or Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, but they have to keep it on file. And I think it's important because it's children, it's people, human beings. But
you're spot on, Si.
But getting on to another thing as well. We were saying about the my last question. The supply and demand, different things, even like things like wood, like this. A lot of the company, if you go outside your 20%, and your 20% of the major companies includes you, of course, Davidoff. We'll forget about Cuba. Davidoff, Fuente, etc. But Padron. If you get outside of that, 80% of the market now is made up of mainly, well, we'll say not the big boys, right? A lot of companies that have popped up, a lot of brands that have popped up during this last couple of years, and this sustainable growth, I'd like to call it, rather than boom. But do you think that the way things are going with regulation, with lack of product, with aging of the leaf not being, like you were okay, you stocked up. I remember you saying a long time ago, you keep so much per year back, and it's a great idea. I'm surprised some people didn't have the foresight to do that. But do you think that a lot of that 80% of smaller companies will fall by the wayside in the future? And I'd like to direct that to Coop and George as well.
Well, I would hope not. I think there's a lot of room in the industry. I was one of those guys who started very small. You have to take a lot of risk in business. It's also really expensive. And, I said earlier, my fertilizers alone in the last year and a half have gone up by 41%. Anything with fuel, whether it be transported or anything, has gone up so high. Just to line my curing houses in Bisqueen for wrappers, for example, so air doesn't penetrate inside the curing barns, even with the windows closed because of wood being porous. My curing barns have gone up almost 31%. When I did my first curing barn site in 1999 in Esteli, it cost me $19,000. It was 100 wide by 300 long. Today it's $130,000 for the same curing barn. So costs have gone up tremendously. An acre of land in Esteli, when I first got there, was about $800. Today you can spend up to $30,000 for an acre. I could buy a piece of land in the United States for $30,000 an acre in a decent area. So costs have gone up, demand has gone up, and because of the demand being up, I'm glad the workers are making, they're doing really well. Like I said earlier, they make a really good living, and I can only speak for my company. We're just going to keep moving forward, and you take the hits. We had S-chip, and 13 years ago there was punishing. We absorbed it. It was, again, our bean counters thought it was crazy. I thought it was more important to have more market share at the time. The companies, you just got to think them through. You got to think things through and see what times are changing and ideas change, and the politics are really the biggest poison to it all. These guys are trying to figure out every which way to tax and regulate everything into the ground, and unfortunately it hurts business. But we just got to fight through it. Look, I got a son. He's in the industry. At my stage of my career, my focus is for the next generation and my son, and trying to pave the road the best I can for him. In a couple months, I'll celebrate 30 years in the industry, believe it or not, George. And, time flies, and I love this industry as much as I did 30 years ago. So I want to continue seeing it do well, and seeing the guys, George said something earlier, the cream rises to the top. He's spot on. If you work hard and you're diligent on the product that you make, that's why Fuente has been consistent for so many years, and we have, and some of the other companies that were mentioned before. I'd be sad if I didn't mention everybody, and I don't want to forget anybody's name, but there's a lot of great companies out there that really care about their consumers. And I think the young guys, if they have that focus instead of making the buck will come. And quality will always bring quantity, but it has to be thoroughly done, and you have to really have that consumer right here in your noggin every single time, in that retailer. Because the only thing I care about at my stage in my career, side, to be honest with you, is that my retailer can always go to the Perdomo section and say, I feel confident in selling anything in this display, and that my consumer says, I've only had really great experiences with your cigars. I mean, what Ian told me earlier today, I mean, that's the things that makes your day. Ian might have taken the COVID out of me. I tell you, it made me feel so good. So.
Yeah.
Many thanks for those wonderful questions. It has been such a wonderful panel discussion today, and we want to be respectful of anybody's time. So I do apologize again if we do not manage to bring all the questions of our audience to the show today, but most definitely it's another sign of we have to continue, and we have to bring some more of these wonderful panel discussions to everybody's attention in 2022 as well. I would love to give Reinhard, William, and George the opportunity again to sort of give us a closing statement and their conclusion as to 21 and the perspective for 22. And please feel free to factor in some of the thoughts that Sai just shared as well. Just before we do that, I wanted to give Oleg an opportunity. He's in Odessa in the cigar lounge with a lot of people, and they wanted to say hello. So Oleg, stage is yours.
Thank you, my dear friend. I'm glad to see you all. Nick, I'm very pleased to smoke in our small cigar lounge in Odessa. Smoke your cigar of the year. It's amazing, really amazing cigar. I'm glad, and really I love your cigars. I smoke a lot of cigars, but you know you're one of the best. My not the cousins, but really amazing cigars you produce. We just almost finished our cigar tasting of your cigars, and just say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you, to Reinhard, to George, to you, Nick, and a lot of health, really a lot of health, and I suppose that this madness with Corona will finish in 2022, and we'll smoke cigars together, and we'll travel a lot, and I want to wish you with my friends, still three of them, me and guys. And really appreciate to Reinhard what you do, and really amazing job. And George, you're amazing. We'll speak with interviews. We'll drink a lot of drinks. I hope we'll drink my cognac and my whiskey also.
Exactly.
And we should do this. And I want to say, just give my glass, a special glass with Slanjiva, with in Irish and Gaelic, just Slanjiva, and a lot of health to you, to our big cigar family, and smoke only good cigars.
That's it.
Of course, we should to smoke sometimes the trash cigars. We should do this, but I really hope that a lot of people try to kill the cigar business, try to kill us in lounges. You can smoke cigarettes, you can smoke IQOS and any garbage, but you cannot smoke cigars. It smells so dirty. But really, we'll fight, and our community will growing up. So, Slange, my friends, on the health to you, and really, I hope really to be in Ireland with Cis Sweeney, and smoke cigars and drink a lot of whiskey.
You can have, you will
Cheers,
drink a lot of
cheers for
whiskey.
you, my friends, and God bless you all, and I hope me too.
Slanta.
Slanja.
All the very best to you, and thanks for saying hello with all the people at the lounge there.
Thank you, my dear friend.
Now, Reinhold, I would love to start with you, and please be so kind to share with us a few final thoughts before we come to an end of this wonderful show and the Light 'em Up year 2021.
Well, thank you, Reinhard. Let me just sum it up in a way that I think that 2021 has been a great cigar year. It was for us as a magazine, it was for the industry, it was for retail, most of the parts at least, for distribution. In preparation of the show, I put down a few things that really impressed me, and there was the reopening, or the reopening of the El Briloy factory of Jason Uman after 111 years. I think there was a major milestone, especially with the difficult situation in the US on cigars. Filiger opened a new cigars factory in Nicaragua. I hear that Aroa is building a new factory in Honduras. We look at new cigar stores. Our friend Yu in Tampa opened Grand Cathedral Cigars this year, which was amazing. In Brisbane, just last week, the Index Cigar Boutique store opened. In the UK, a lot of cigar stores opened in Vietnam, in Italy, in Panama, in Switzerland, especially in hotels. Great cigar lounges. Demand was up, consumption was up, and some really great cigar events took place in the US. I think it was a good cigar year. Nobody can complain. There were some downsides in availability, logistics. The increase of prices is enormous, and we all suffer from that, of course. We, as a cigar magazine, we had increases of paper, printing, logistics, shipping, and so forth at about 25%, which is tremendous. So there are some downside sides, but in general, I think we had a great cigar year. And I have to say, I have to thank all the manufacturers like Nick and Jose and all the people who are in the cigar industry. Many thanks for your great work. The products have never been better. When we talk about decrease of quality, we usually talk about not the major brands, but brands that are dependent on farmers or box industries or whatever. The big ones do it themselves. They have problems themselves, of course, but not as much. I think we had a great year. And also I want to mention that even though we could not get together in person, one of the biggest achievements during the pandemic was the involvement of shows like this right now. And I can't thank you enough. You bring us together from all over the world at all time zones, at any occasion, and we see each other and we can say hello, and we're together thanks to you. And that's a great thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reinhard. Many, many thanks. Coop, over to you, my dear friend.
All right, off mute again. No, I say this a lot. It's not taken for granted the interaction we have with the industry, and the people that have been there for us in the industry, the people who we're now more and more interacting with. It's not taken for granted. We know a lot of folks take their personal time even to talk to us, and it's appreciated as well. It's an honor to be on with all you. Reinhold, this is the first time I know we think we've been on a show together, and it's just great to meet you and hear what you have to say. Nick, we've gotten to know each other over the past few years, and I thank you a lot for the support that you've given us, as well as everyone else, whether it's an audience, consumer, or anyone. It's not taken for granted. Maybe I could say, every year can't be the greatest year in the cigar industry, but a lot of times one year is going to be better than the others. But in the end, I think, there's always positives. We're here talking cigars today, which is a very, very good thing. And I fear if a day comes when we can't do that, that's when we're really going to be in trouble here right now. So I look forward to 2022. I think it's always a roller coaster with the cigar industry. It's always fun, and I look forward to it and continuing to talk to you all and meeting new people and Thank you very much.
Awesome, William. Many thanks. George, my dear friend and fellow, share some final thoughts with us before we come to the end of the Light 'em Up year 2021.
Well, thanks for the time in general, and I echo my colleagues' commendations to you for so capably organizing and graciously hosting these get-togethers. And let's be clear about one thing. The cigar industry is always challenged. It's always under pressure. And in truth, our enemies, namely the killjoys who think that there's no room in this world to enjoy something as simple and yet divine a pleasure as a great cigar, and how it enhances your solitary moments and builds the most wonderful social moments with your friends and family. There's always going to be a challenge to being in the business, but that's one of the reasons why the cigar industry through the centuries has attracted some of the most unique, passionate, creative, original people that you'll meet in any walk of life. So we need to continue to do things like this to celebrate those people. And I'd like to point out one thing that I think Reinhard touched on too, which is that the silver lining of the pandemic, whatever, you know, all the tragic loss of life and all the other issues that have occurred, the silver lining is that by virtue of our isolation, we have found other ways to form communities, and they have solidified our bonds. Now, I would also like to say that the cigar industry's use and embrace of social media as a tool for community building is far more soulful and far more personal than you find in practically any other industry. There are all kinds of people who are constantly looking to embrace various aspects of social media, you know, whatever is new, whether it was Twitter back in the day and TikTok now. Most of them are nakedly commercial, and most of them are, so much of the approach is absolutely mercenary in its approach. But the cigar industry, over and over and over again on great platforms like Meet the Professor and here on Light 'em Up and Coop's show, you see what I used to call the cigar gangsters, the real legends of the business, taking time out from their family time, from their work time, whatever else, and really giving of themselves honestly to open themselves up to interaction with their fan base, whether it's in the retail business or distribution or the consumers. They're there and they're open and accessible and honest and straightforward in a way that I swear you cannot find anywhere else. So, you know, keep up the great work and let's continue, all of us, to find ways to share our time together, however long it takes for us to actually gather someplace together in the same room and celebrate each other and the bonds that we have formed in this really trying and challenging time. And I'm so excited for that day because I know it's coming. And you know, yeah, we're going to be able to drink brandy from Ukraine and brilliant Irish whiskey and probably even a little bit of Guinness from Dublin, and all of us will be bringing to the table our favorite cigars, the things that have you know, made an impact on us and enhanced our lives so much. And that moment of sharing is, I really look forward to it. So I thank you again for all of your efforts because they're admirable, and we should all recognize how privileged we are to be a part of it.
Here. Cheers.
Sorry, just one comment since I see Sarah on the screen. I love what happened in 2021. So many more women joined the cigar community. And Sarah, you're a big part of that. Thank you very much. And I just love it.
Here. Well said, Reinhold.
Sarah just joined us because unfortunately, and I have to apologize for that, the WICC meeting always takes place on Wednesday as well. So we have a bit of a time clash there, but it is most greatly appreciated what you do, Sarah. And you know that you have all our support and we're in this together. And there'll be plenty more to come in 22.
Reinhard, I forgive you because of what you do. It's not about who was here first, it's about what we do, you know. And I'm just so I'm just going to echo what George said, if I may, just for 2 seconds, just to say that, you know, I found friends over the many years, the decades now, which is extraordinary for me to even think of saying, that I've been smoking cigars and getting to know people in the community. And I've met people in the last 2 years that I would never have imagined that I could meet, that I didn't even know existed, in terms of people in the industry and also people who are not in the industry but are in the community. And one of the things that I'm actually very proud of with WICC is that it represents the community as well as reaching into the industry. And that's something that's so important. I've never found, you know, I've been involved in gastronomy and wine, and not even in those worlds does that crossover have such fertility and true friendship and a humble acceptance and acknowledgement of knowledge and skill. And I've said it many times before, every time I go on any cigar event, online or otherwise, I realize how little I know and how exciting it is to know so much more. So bring on 2022 for more knowledge and for more friends. I can't wait.
Bravo. Well said.
What else can I say apart from many, many thanks to all of you for allowing us the pleasure on a weekly basis to provide this humble little platform for all of us to get together, to share our perspectives, to share the love and appreciation for finest handmade premium cigars. It's that wonderful, magical thing that brings us all together. Yet there's so much more behind it. It's the community, it's the camaraderie, and exactly what you all just said and what you shared with us. We're in this together, and I feel honored, and I'm very privileged and grateful to share so many wonderful moments and memories together with you, whether that's virtually or in person. And I look forward to so much more of all that next year.
Yeah, bring on 22.
And stellar 2021 for us here at Light 'em Up. And I want to personally thank all of you for your generosity, for your candor and support, for allowing us into this wonderful world that means so much to me and to all of us. So many thanks. Light 'em up, and we'll see you again next year in 20.
And thank you, Reinhard. Thank you for all you do.
Cheers to all of you. Goodbye.
All right.
Good night.
Cheers.
Good night.